speak on behalf of the group. I will tell you what is best for society. I speak for the people. And now you're on that slippery slope of the people this and the people that, and we represent the people when in fact it's an oligarchy always of one or two or small group of people that rule the whole regime in the name of the group. And every atrocity that you can imagine throughout history has been committed in the name of the greater good of the greater number. Most of the wars of history and many of the atrocities of our current day are being justified in the name of this is good for society, or it's good for our nation, or if we don't do this now, whatever the argument is, it's that we must sacrifice individuals in order to provide a greater benefit for a greater number of people. Now, it's hard to get over that. It was for me because I had lived with that concept for so long as a young man, and I thought, wait a minute, there's got to be something wrong here. And then I began to think, no, I was tricked. For example, this idea of democracy, the rule of the majority, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It brings us to the question of the difference between a republic and a democracy. I know that's a phrase that you probably have heard many times of people in this audience anyway. There have been books written on it and pamphlets written on it, speeches given on it and so forth. But still, people, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? Now, we're talking about the classic definition of the word republic. Not today, it doesn't mean anything today. I mean, we got the Republic of China. Every dictatorship in the world calls itself a republic today. But classically, when the issue was brought up in the creation of the United States Constitution, and I'm back to that, the founding fathers of America had long discussions, and they exchanged letters and gave speeches about it, and they said, we do not want this country to be a democracy. That's the last thing we want. They said the democracy is the worst form of government imaginable because it always destroys itself. It feeds upon itself. It creates mob rule. And it just works so long as the majority can plunder the minority until finally everybody's plundering everybody else, and then it collapses and always goes into a form of dictatorship. And they said that over and over and over again. And they looked to history for examples, and they were right. They don't teach that in school now. In fact, they didn't teach it when I was going through, which was 3,000 years ago. And they had already forgotten it then. But it's a fact. So what is this difference between a republic and a democracy? Well, majority rule. Is that a good idea under all circumstances? Notice the phrase, all circumstances. What about a lynch mob? There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. That's majority rule, is it not? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it is. That's majority rule, but that's not such a good idea either. Why not? It's because individuals have rights. Even individual of one against the group has a right to a fair trial, at least. And so the difference between a republic in the classical definition and a democracy is the democracy is majority rule, end of discussion. As long as you can get 51% of the vote, then you can do anything you want to do to the other 49%. Too bad about you guys, but you lost. We're winners. That's the kind of world we live in today. Democracy. We do have democracies today. They didn't start out as democracies, but that's what they have become. But a republic says, no, you can't do that. The majority cannot deny the rights of the minority, even a minority of 1 against 100 million. Mathematics has nothing to do with it. It's the principle of the individual. You see, we're back to individualism versus collectivism. It's the principle of the supremacy of the individual. We have rights that are ingrained in us, and I don't care how many other people there are that want to take our rights away. They may be able to do so because they have all the numbers, but they don't have the right to do so. And so if we're putting together the kind of a philosophical program that we want the future to live by. We want our children and grandchildren to live by, and within, we better be very clear on the idea that the individual is the cornerstone of society and not the group. Because the whole purpose of the governments should be to protect the rights of the individual. If you remember, right in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence for the United States, it says it is the function of the state to protect the rights of the individual, not to grant them, but to protect the rights of the individual. Very important concept. And this is perhaps the most fundamental of all of the dividing lines between the individualists and the collectivists. Let's move on. I could talk and would like to talk more about all of these, but time does not permit. Here's a very important one, coercion versus freedom. You can always spot a collectivist mind because I have a very good friend, by the way. He denies that he's a collectivist, but boy, is he ever. If he sees something he doesn't like, if somebody throws a cigarette on the ground, you say, there ought to be a law. You know people like that. Maybe there are some here, I don't know. I kind of used to be that way myself before I thought it through. Ought to be a law. Put these people in jail that messed up that ground. Everything we don't like, there ought to be a law. We want to force people to do what they should do. We don't want to give them freedom of choice. You know, why not? Because they might not do what we think they should do. And we're smarter than they. We're wiser than they. We're better than they. We should rule. We should make the rules, and they should follow them. See, that's the mentality. They will do it right. You see, that's the characteristic of collectivism. One of them that is present in all of these regimes, and they don't want to give people freedom of choice. Now, seatbelts is a good example. I mean, we all know that seatbelts are a good idea. The collectivist says you've got to wear seatbelts. You should wear seatbelts because if you're in an accident, it could save your life. So seatbelts are a good idea. Therefore, we'll pass a law, and if you don't wear seatbelts, you dummy, we're going to put you in jail. Individualists say seatbelts are a good idea. I agree with that. People should wear them because if you're in an accident, you might get hurt without them. But we don't believe in forcing people to wear them. We believe in encouraging them. We believe in, especially in showing by our own good example what should be done. But we don't believe in using coercion, using law as an instrument of coercion to force people to do what we think they should do. Now, that is a very common element of all collectivist regimes, and certainly it was present in the Soviet Union, still present there, by the way, but it's probably more dominant in the Western world than we care to think. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and I walked out, and I was stunned by this sign that was there right in front of the hotel. It says, I think it was $200 fine. It says no parking, or I got it right. It's handicapped only, $200 fine. $200 fine. Now, who wouldn't leave the space open for a handicapped person? And I took a picture of it, and on my website, I used my Photoshop, and I took out the $200 sign, and I put in, thank you. And then I put them side by side and said, what kind of a community would you like to live in? The one that's going to force you to leave the parking open for somebody, which you would gladly do under most conditions, or one that's going to charge you $200 if you don't do it. You see, this is the mentality that has crept into our society all around the world. And it's a common element of collectivism. Collectivists do not believe in freedom, really. They don't believe that freedom works. They don't think you can have a good society without compelling people under force of law, punishment, fines, imprisonment, and if necessary, execution, to make people do what they are supposed to do. The fourth element, equality versus inequality. Well, individualists believe that the law should treat everyone equally. Everybody gives lip service to that concept, don't they? Yeah, the law should apply to everyone equally. Do you know how many laws we have on the books that do not apply to everyone equally? Well, I don't either, but I'm going to guess from my survey, probably about 95% of them do not apply to everyone equally. There are exceptions. Take the tax laws, for example. Did everybody pay the same amount of tax? Heck no. It depends on your income bracket, your age, how many children you have, how much political influence you have, what part of the world you live in, what part of the country you live in, how many exemptions you have, do you have any dependents, if you have any strong contacts in Washington, maybe you got a little bill passed that gives you a loophole. And that's the whole reason for those. How many books do they have? IRS rules, regulations, and laws. I guess they fill a whole room. Nobody's ever read them all. Every one of those pages is filled with exceptions to make sure that the law is applied unequally. That's the whole purpose of the income tax, is to make it unequal. And the logic behind it, of course, by the collectivists is that, yes, we deliberately make it unequal so that we can equalize the unfair conditions in society. So we're trying to overcome what we consider to be an unpleasant or unacceptable social condition by creating another unpleasant social condition. We're going